the worst news in the world, and we want answers. We want to know what happened. We want justice to be served.
She's right. Had they done a proper search,
and we could blame it on lack of manpower, but that's no excuse. People paying taxpayers' money. You call people and you do whatever you got to do.
To me, piss poor search of all time.
But you got to eliminate them completely as a suspect before you can start going off someplace else.
Who in the hell doesn't search bodies of water? That's done immediately.
They're expecting, hey, my daughter's son is missing, and they're expecting to see folks actually really go out and look.
What is obvious is they failed to thoroughly investigate and search the scene. And meanwhile, yards away, a body is decomposing.
Hill of Justice is sponsored and produced by Jermaine Delmas Studios.
An 18-year-old texts his mother, "Mom, help me." And days later, he's found dead in a pond off a Florida highway. What we learned thereafter was a bunch of failed instincts, broken trust, and institutional negligence. We'll pull away the layers and take you step by step to 3 red flags and let you decide afterwards, could this be a function of foul play? I'm Jerome Hill, and with me is retired Sheriff Victor Hill, and we're your hosts of Hill of Justice. Victor, let's set the stage. Giovanni leaves his North Carolina home, heads to Englewood, Florida, which is on the west coast of Florida, to visit his family. Then at 1:30 at night, and in the morning, he's picked up by 2 cousins and another individual who's, I guess he's a friend of the cousins. And he's met none of them before. He's only talked to his cousins through the telephone. And these people are estranged members of his father's side of his family. He was raised by his mother and stepfather. So they haven't spoken prior to this. They pick him up to head north on towards Brevard County. And that's roughly about 3 hours away. That's our first red flag. Don't you think?
I agree. 1:30 in the morning.
You never met these folks? For
Right.
real?
Where are you going 1:30 in the morning with some cousins you never met, or even cousins, you know?
Yeah, right. I mean, you're 18 years old. You don't know much about life. You're not even in your home state. Who made that decision? You know? And so we got that. And let's talk about the behavior now, okay? Giovanni senses danger at some point during that during that ride. It was about 20, 25 minutes in. He calls his family. They didn't pick up. He texts his mom, that famous text. And according to the cousins, he suddenly jumps out of the car and walks off into the dark. But here's the question. Who lets someone just walk off on State Road 70 near I-75 at night? Second red flag. Who does that?
How did he jump out the car?
Right.
There's no stoplight on the interstate, correct?
Right. And then why didn't you go after your own cousin? If he's in distress, what's going on here? And you drive away?
Also, and you never met your cousins before, so y'all talking 1:30 in the morning. Hey, we need to reconnect. Well, let's reconnect 1:30 in the morning. To do what? Go where?
Right. And that's
what is it that they said we were going to do that? Okay, 1:30 in the morning would be logical to go do.
Right. To go ahead and meet your other family members on the other side of the state. So you won't get there till about 4:30 in the morning? Who's talking then?
I agree.
At that point in time. So the story fractures. And morally, no one is in their right mind can, think this, okay? Is it a crime of picking them up at that time? We know it's not, But once again, if you have a kid who's panicked for some reason, you're going to let them wander onto a Florida highway? I mean, we've seen people get killed for less. And then, that's reckless abandonment as far as I'm concerned. These cousins, they don't call the police. They don't turn around. They just drive off. So this is what it leads to. Let's take a look at the clip.
New details in the death investigation after a teen disappeared on vacation here in Florida. The Manatee County Sheriff's Office, though, still trying to figure out what happened to Giovanni Pelletier.
His body was found in a pond on Friday after getting out of his cousin's car on the side of a highway. Fox 35's Esther Bauer hears from his family, who wants the FBI to get involved.
Multiple law enforcement agencies across the state were involved in this missing person search, including the Brevard Sheriff. While the young man was not found here in Central Florida, he has ties to the community, and his family is pushing for more answers. 18-year-old Giovanni Pelletier went on vacation and vanished.
People don't just end up missing. Something happened to them.
His body was recovered in a pond at the intersection of I-75 and State Road 70 in Manatee County on Friday, a week after he disappeared.
We got the worst news in the world, and we want answers. We want to know what happened. We want justice to be served.
Investigators in Charlotte County initially said Giovanni was headed to Brevard County with his cousins. Those cousins told deputies he began to act erratically and got out of the car near State Road 70 in Manatee County around 1:30 in the morning on August 1st. His family says he sent a text to his mom saying, "Help me," and wasn't heard from since.
If a 1 mile search would have been done thoroughly, there would have been a potential to figure out what happened to him.
Giovanni's cousin.
She's right. And what she's right about is, if you heard her at the end, had they done a proper search, because later on, in that same morning where he's reported missing, later on that day, they find Giovanni's backpack and cell phone on the side of that same road. And let's talk about law enforcement in this part. They had search party. They formed it, but they didn't find his body. That was just haphazard. And in the pond, which is basically a stone's throw from where he was last seen, that's where he's at. I mean, a private citizen. In fact, the mother's friend who drove from North Carolina to Florida found the body a week later at that location. To me, piss poor search of all time. That's just inexcusable.
You're right. Let me tell you, I've seen this a lot. It's missing children. Well, they consider 18-year-old an adult, but realistically, it's really not. But there's this attitude with law enforcement where, okay, we'll take the report, we'll look, well, he probably just ran off, he probably just whatever. And it gets to be this complacency thing. Because I know that happened a lot in my county and with the police. And then people would call me and say, "Hey, Sheriff, we got a missing person or whatever. Can you send someone to look for him?" Because really, the police would just take a report. They're not going to really, a patrol officer, this, and we could blame it on lack of manpower, but that's no excuse. People paying taxpayers' money. You call people in, you do whatever you got to do. But usually when a person comes and take a report for a missing person, nothing happens from that moment unless it's a small child. Then maybe they'll say, "Hey, let's get together and start looking, or let's call some people in." But what I would do anytime we get these cases is send a minimum of 2 deputies. I don't care if it's just a 16-year-old, it's a 16-year-old. They probably ran off with their boyfriend or whatever. Hey, go out and start actively looking. Go visit all of their friends. Go find out where the last place they are. And usually we can resolve it. A lot of times it is what people say it is, but at least we figured it out early instead of assuming it's not. And then we got a body 2-3 weeks later, and then someone saying, well, something more had been done. So I used to get those calls all the time because there's a complacency with the police. And if the leader is not strong and say, "Hey, I want every case looked into, we got to do a minimum of this," instead of just taking a report, this type of stuff will continue to happen.
Yeah.
But it's literally one of those things where you got to have leaders who, not just lead the horse to the water, but pry the mouth open force feed the water, put an IV in, and don't come up with this, well, I led him to the water, but I can't make him drink. Because you and I know, we've been on police force, most of these guys are only going to do as much as you make them do.
Correct.
So they take the report and then they go back to the Waffle House and talk to a waitress. We got a missing person. I don't care if they're 30 years old or whatever. We need to do at least a basic preliminary search from the time we get that report. That way, if something's amiss, we know sooner. Don't just say, well, she is an adult. I mean, maybe she does this and that. There should be at least, okay, hey, go, where does she live? Who's her boyfriend? Let's go talk to him. Where'd you last see her? And get the preliminaries done. And then we can make a determination if we need to go further or if, this is probably a situation where we pretty much verified she just probably went somewhere and we can't do anything about that. But if you just treat them all the same, like, well, there's nothing we can do, then this is the type of stuff you get.
Yeah. And what's really, truly inexcusable is you have ponds of water all over the place. And if it was a small child and went missing, especially under suspicious circumstances, who in the hell doesn't search bodies of water? That's done immediately.
Immediately.
In Florida, we know that. Everywhere in the world does that. How did they miss that? Nobody does that.
I don't know. And then, now with the technology the way it is, back in the day, especially if there was a missing child and it was a lake nearby, then they knew, okay, well, we need to at least drag the lake to make sure. Because back then it was whatever. But now we really don't need divers anymore. We got these underwater drones that can go and
Correct.
search underwater. And no doubt, even in water where you can't see, they're going to have the type of equipment where they can detect or see through. Because, a diver, how much can a diver see? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So whatever technology is needed, but you can pretty much use underwater drones now to conduct these searches. So it's not like you need divers or anything. So I think anyone that has a body of water, even if it's just lakes, need to have that technology, because when they come up missing, well, let's eliminate that as being a place.
Right. I'm with you. They comply to the minimum standards of a missing person case.
Right.
And what is obvious is they failed to thoroughly investigate and search the scene, clearly. And meanwhile, yards away, a body is decomposing. It was half in the water, half out of the water. That's where they were able to find the body.
So it's not a body that sank and then came back up after decomposition. It was halfway in. Let me.
If it wasn't placed there, right?
Right. But let me tell you another thing that I had to do because of these missing person cases, and they had the opportunity. You got a backpack. Mm-hmm. So I bought about 4 bloodhounds just for stuff like that. We got a backpack. Okay, he can sniff the backpack, get the scent, and then we can figure out where did he go from there. If we got a shoe, a backpack, anything that was connected to that person, that's where the bloodhounds come in, because bloodhounds can lock on a scent. You just use German Shepherds to do it. They're going to hit a scent, but it might be the scent of a cop that just walked past here. So now they're looking for the wrong scent. But if you got a bloodhound and they're trained to lock in on a specific scent, then finding that backpack immediately, I would have said, okay, get a bloodhound here, get a scent on this, and let's see what his exact movements were from there.
Right.
What do you do? What do these folks do? Did they just pick out the backpack and made a report and say, oh, well.
Right.
The fact that the backpack is there and not with him should have been an alarm symbol right there, signal right there.
Right. Add on to it, on these interstates down here, you always see a sign saying, guess what? Under surveillance by plane. Where's your plane? You could have hovered around. You didn't do none of that. You lost precious time and possibly evidence because of your negligence. And that's
right.
What kills me about this whole thing. So this is one of the last, of course, the cousins, and at the time of the recording, I do want to go ahead and say this. The cousins are not considered to be suspects. But you and I know they are. They're the last people that saw them.
Yeah. Now, is it possible that what they're saying is true? Well, we had a saying when I was in homicide, some things is possible, not probable, but we can't rule it out as impossible. Is it possible you had an argument with a person, they get out the car and walk off, and you're innocent and then they just happen to run into somebody and kill them. Yeah, that's possible, and it has happened.
Right.
But you got to eliminate them completely as a suspect before you can start going off someplace else. And first, you got to start with what you got, and
Right.
that's them. Now, if you're able to eliminate them by DNA, by their cell phones, whatever, fine. But they have to be eliminated first before you can go to the next theory.
Right. So we have one of the law enforcement agencies said that each of the individuals that were in the car with them, the two cousins and the friend of the two cousins, they all gave consistent stories. But you know, and I know that don't mean much of anything. They can have consistent stories all they want. This will fall down under the investigative techniques thereafter, toxicology reports, and so on and so forth. I'm interested in the diatom, though. I really want to see what that testing does. And if they're able to go ahead and find out whether the waters in the lungs matches the pond water that he was found in, to find out if he actually did drown, or was he placed there post-mortem?
Yeah, I mean, if he's halfway in the lake and halfway out the lake, I doubt if he drowned. I mean, for a person to drown like that, you'd have to be under some type of influence. And then as a result of being under influence, maybe you fell or something like that. That's possible. Not probable, but possible. But, but I tell you, before you even get to toxicology, before you even get to trace evidence like DNA, anytime there's a violent encounter, there's going to be an exchange. Like if he was fighting with one of them, his fingernails, maybe he scratched one, or there's anytime two bodies collide, even if it's a car, as you well know, there's going to be an exchange.
Right.
If a red car hits a white car, there's going to be
paint exchange. Right?
White. Yeah, exactly.
Transfer paint.
But before you even get to that, it needs to be polygraphs. I mean, when you say they all had consistent stories, I wonder what was their level of expertise. Were they all sitting in the same room with the same story, or did they separate everybody?
Right. That's another
and
part.
talk. Right. And then after they separate everybody, did they offer them polygraphs? Did they accept the polygraphs? Did they deny the polygraph? And if they took the polygraphs, did they actually pass? In order to be thorough, all of those things need to be done. No stone needs to be unturned.
Right. Right. More to your point is, let's talk about signs of trauma. The law enforcement agency said they have no signs of trauma as of yet. Okay. That doesn't mean that, once they do the autopsy, they don't see something else afterwards. But as of right now, that's what they're portraying in the news. So if all those elements are checking out on that end of it, then we're going to the toxicology reports. And, of course, we're detecting for drugs, poisons, substance in the bloodstream. And even, as you know, marijuana can go ahead and get somebody excited and full of anxiety, especially if it's done for the very first time.
That's or if it's laced.
Or if it's laced. Right.
It's laced. Laced. We've seen cases where people went and they're just buying weed, but somebody laced it with something.
Right.
And that's been happening a lot recently.
Right. So you do have all those things, but, and then we're going to go ahead and do a full medical exam. And what I mean by that is really the background of Giovanni, including his mental health, to see if there's any clues that we can gain from there. But I'm interested to find out the geofencing portion of this.
I agree.
GPS location pings, the text messages, and even the deleted messages. I want to see what
that's even more important. That's
right.
Even more important. Was deleted.
Right.
Yeah. Let me just say this, and not in their defense, but in their defense, it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is it suspicious? Very. It's a possibility that a person could get out of a car and something can happen to them and you actually didn't do anything to them. But in the eyes of good policing, you've got to absolutely, positively eliminate them as suspects. Scientifically, be it DNA, be it geofencing or whatever. interviews, polygraphs. You got to absolutely be able to prove that, hey, it's not them. Not, I don't think it's them.
Mm-hmm.
You got to eliminate. There's no way it could be them because
Right.
the DNA on his body doesn't match. Or at the time, the geofencing only shows them at this spot this time, and then it shows the phone moving there. So there was no way they could have been there long enough to do anything to him.
Right.
You have to do it that way. Is it possible? It's possible.
Yeah.
And I will say this.
Yeah.
There are sometimes we investigated cases and it looked one way and it's like, well, it's got to be this. And we find out it's something completely different. You know, investigators got to be real careful about that because they'll decide what happened. Oh, no, it can't be. He killed him. Or sometimes they decide, oh, no, there's no way that person did it. And they actually did it. You got to be able to keep an open mind during the whole investigation.
Right.
If we look at probabilities, the probabilities don't fit that story, but you've got to be open-minded to there's a possibility. Can that happen? It can.
Right. Right. So we're looking at data apps, WhatsApp, Snapchat, all those other things. We're going to rebuild the moment. And we're going to also take a look at the phone and smartwatches because we have to go ahead and do that, you know, but also the vehicle route. We got to search the vehicle also and see if there's any type of trace evidence of any sort. We've got to map out the route to see how that looks like, and the traffic cameras, because a lot of people don't think about those, but we got to pull those and the security footage on that. And so one of the things that they can do to help their cause is certainly test the soil and the water. I think that those will be helpful matters too. More to your point, to exclude or include them, or in part of this evidence base. But the behavioral analysis of the cousins, you know, they failed in every single way that you can. That's the very first measure. I mean, morally, they completely corrupt on that end of it. I mean, you look at their stories and you're like, what? Are you serious? That's what you're going to do with your cousin? You're trying to, when you meet somebody for the very first time, you know, you're going to put out all the stops. You know, it just stinks so bad on that end of it.
Yeah, I agree. And let's get back to one thing too. Yeah, if they haven't done and do a search warrant on that car, and like you said, trace evidence, microscopic evidence, they need to spray it with luminol.
Right.
You know, because, you know, people think they clean up blood, but they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And there's chemicals that if you spray, you can actually see the blood patterns. It has to be a thorough investigation. It can't just be, well, you know, they said that or whatever. You got to really, really be thorough with no stone left unturned.
Right.
And if there's no trace evidence in that car, if all that other stuff, then it could be one of those rare cases where, as crazy as it sounds, okay, we got to figure out what happened when he got out the car.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, again, let's say there's drug usage in the car and that type of drug usage caused him to get out of the car. You know, that's another thing that has to be looked at as well. But like you said, that'll come up with toxicology.
Right.
So there's all those things there, but you got to start at the base root and eliminate each thing one by one. If there was violence in the car, the evidence is there. They're not gonna be able to go in there and vacuum and get every hair out of it, every blood drop. If there's a trace of blood in there, the right crime scene investigator can find it.
Right. So the family right now is upset with local law enforcement and state law enforcement. They feel as though they dropped the ball on this and that they had to find their own son in that condition. So they're asking for the FBI to get involved, which quite truthfully, I'm happy that they, and I hope that they do, because, you know, you need BAU, the behavioral analysis unit, and they're going to be able to profile not only the suspects on that, but even, you know, Giovanni, to see what could likely be happening at that time of that disappearance. So, you know, of course, they're going to ask, you know, was Giovanni forcibly removed? I think that is one of the things you're talking about, threatened or even drugged. I mean, that's where those are the questions right off the bat, you know?
Yeah.
Did the cousins fabricate parts of the story? You know, because nobody's a hero. None of what they're saying is hey, guess what? We abdicated our rights to be heroes. We just let him just go in the woods by himself to get done.
Exactly.
Of course, we understand that. Hey, I mentioned earlier, the death could have occurred somewhere else, and they could have placed him there.
And I'm glad you said that. Here's one of the first things you learn when you go to homicide school. Why, anytime a body is moved, there's a reason. And that reason is to separate that person from the crime. Meaning, let's say you got company at your house and you kill somebody. Well, the body can't stay there, because if it's there, then it's going to be, well, they're in your house. You either killed them or you know who did it. So anytime you find a body that's dumped, the priority is to locate where the actual crime scene took place. Because that's where all of the real evidence is going to be. And also that's when you can figure out where the real jurisdiction is at. Because we found bodies in my county, but the actual place they were murdered was someplace else. Mm-hmm. So then at that point, they take jurisdiction over the murder. We work that crime scene where the body was dumped, but then they have to come in on that crime scene, because if the murder occurred there, that's the jurisdiction that's going to do the actual prosecution. But if that body was picked up and taken there, it's for a reason. And that means that, if he was dead before where he was found, it's for a reason. It's to get him out of the car or to get him out of someplace else. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's so important to do that search warrant for the car thoroughly, right? And with the technology now, there shouldn't be any reason. If you look back at the Wayne Williams case,
right,
that's how that was solved, with fibers from carpet that was found on a body, and they were able to trace it back there.
Correct.
So that type of trace evidence there should exist.
Right. And the sad part of this whole thing is, now that they discovered the body and now they have to do a thorough autopsy on him, this prolongs the families, for lack of a better word, closure. I mean, closure is really not what anybody gets when they find something like that. But
Jerome, I just want to
deal with that.
I just want to say this too. My condolences to the family, and I know they feel there's a disconnect. And, people talk about a disconnect with law enforcement in the community, but I think that a lot of law enforcement has lost touch with what that disconnect truly is. The disconnect is they're expecting more police work. They're expecting, hey, my daughter's son is missing, and they're expecting to see folks actually really go out and look. They're expecting, hey, we found a backpack. Let's get a bloodhound here. Let's track this. Let's get as much people here and stay on this as possible. I think a lot of law enforcement people, especially executives, they think the disconnect is, we got to get out here and dance and do a line dance with everybody and show everybody what nice people we are, and show everybody that we can cry to and get on press conferences and cry. It's ridiculous. I think what people really want to know is, there's some people here that's really going to help me if my child is missing. People that's really going to rescue me if I'm taken hostage or whatever. Or if I'm missing, they're going to really come and look for me. They're not going to just file a report and it builds dust, and 3 weeks later when we find them, okay, now let's do something. That's the real disconnect. It's not all this officer-friendly stuff. I don't think people really care how friendly officers are, as long as they're not being unfair and not doing whatever, things like that. But if we're going to do a friendly litmus test, this might be one of the most friendly agencies we've ever seen. Mm-hmm. But meanwhile, people are getting raped, robbed, and murdered.
Right. And then you had, and the family had enough presence of mind to go ahead and have an outfit of private investigators to go ahead and help them with this search. And thus, they were able to go ahead and find his body instead of law enforcement, which to me is just a disgusting piece of work on that end of it.
It's a failure, because now you have to pay for something you've already paid for. Tax dollars are paid so that when something happens, You're supposed to have the best of the best manhunters, the best of the best detectives. But now that's why you see private security and private detectives are making so much money, because people can't depend. I've said this before in shows. Most government workers are lazy.
Right.
And if there isn't somebody there to make them do the job, they're only going to do just that much to get by. And that's why you see so much waste in government, not just waste of money, but waste of time, where things could be getting done, how you allocate manpower, what you do with the manpower when you get it. You'll hear people all the time say we don't have enough manpower. Then when you look at the manpower they got and what they actually got the people doing, they're hiring people for positions that should be in the street, but they give them goofy things to do. I know of an agency where they put a person in a deputy position, but their job is just to give massages.
Right.
I think the public would rather have another badge and gun out there protecting them. I don't think the public feels, you know what, it's just good to know that there's a deputy there giving other deputies massages. And that's the type of craziness you see. And that's why you see this crime rate going up. And that's why you also see when things like this happen, that the appropriate manpower to handle something like that is not being handled correctly or being appropriated correctly to where it should be.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Giovanni didn't walk away from his life. He was walked away from. He was walked away from by the cops. He was walked away by the system, his cousins, and now he's gone. And shortly, we'll know the truth. It's coming up shortly. But until then, like, share, comment. Do you think this was an accident? A cover-up, a case of convenient apathy? Including, was Giovanni failed by the individuals or by the system that shrugs and looks at boys that look like him, and they don't care? So drop your theories, your outrage, and your support of Giovanni's family below. And until next time.